Reddit, when is it time to give up on someone? This may be controversial in nature of other responses I have seen. I don't really think you can ever be 100% sure when the time is right. I always thought about leaving my relationship. All of the stresses and lack of communication, the one-sidedness. Eventually, I explained all of my problems sternly, waiting to hear her just pull the same excuses and to turn it around on me. But that didn't happen. She started explaining all of these things that made everything make sense. So many things clicked that night and we became better than ever. If you truly believe you belong with someone, you need to keep working on fixing the problems together and make sure you explain your problems directly. You must also listen and take theirs into account or else you will both live miserably. I was so ready to give up. With one final push everything clicked and I have never been happier. I hope that all readers out there will get what they truly deserve and will live happily in life. It is possible. Just keep working. So true. Communication is key 100%. When after countless attempts to help them go through life they still have no desire to improve and they just keep you from improving on your own. It sucks being this person. Hopefully take something with you knowing you did yourself a favor finally, and you might have sparked them to change. It definitely sparked me, but too little too late. I've been living with my eyes closed for years. I'm full of regret and self-loathing, but I suppose she was, too, for too long. When you feel better spending time apart because it's less stressful. When you feel it's a one-sided relationship and they just don't understand how you feel but only how they perceive. When they can't take responsibility for their own actions. When all you do is fight and have more bad days than good. When you find their inner self being much less attractive. When the sex is gone. When you wonder why you stick around and realize it's because dating is hard and you'd rather be in a crappy relationship than not in one at all. Finally, when you're with that person and you still feel alone. All of this, when you look forward to the next time you go to work and you realize it's not because you like your job. When things cycle endlessly, same behaviors, same arguments, same excuses and promises exchanged. No, just stop wasting your time. I'm living this. PLZ help. Never make someone a priority when you are only an option to them. If you find yourself in this situation, it's time to bounce. Spot on. If you've sat them down and had an open and honest conversation, aired your issues and shared your feelings and they won't take notice or action, then it's time. They shouldn't need more than one chance to take action or listen either. Don't be strung along if you've given your all and tried. Actions speak louder than words. They can say they are going to change. They can change for a week, but if or when they go straight back to how they were, it's time to reassess. My work colleague was excited when I mentioned I played D&D and he told me he can never find time or people to play, so I came up with a little session for him to come over my apartment. When the day came he completely flaked and slept in. Then on the day we rescheduled he called me like an hour before saying he couldn't make it. Last week he asked again about a game day so I told him to come over for board games. About 2 hours beforehand he tells me something came up. I rescheduled for Thursday, and Jay don't know what I was expecting but he was a no call no show. I texted him once and he didn't respond and I realized I'd wasted another evening waiting on this guy. Both days this week I spent time getting my apartment perfectly clean for visitors and had to forego visiting my girlfriend for the evening. I'm not doing this again. I have a story for you. My ex. She had been molested as a child. Her mother was a hoarder. She was abused mentally, emotionally and sometimes physically. She had a lot of problems walking in, let's say. I was willing to do anything and everything in my power to help this person. And I tried as much as a 20-year-old college kid could. I made strides to make sure all our time together was happy and she has the freedoms and choices she otherwise lacked. I dedicated most if not all my money to her. I got her to work and school and anywhere she wanted. I made sure to take her to pay all her bills no matter if I had just got off work and was burned out. I opened my home when she had too much at her own and my mom even offered to let her live with us as she had been abused in her own life. You only ever think of yourself. That same person said those same words to me. I will never forget or forgive that. She said those words 2 months before we broke up, but the relationship well and truly ended there. It is time to give up on someone when they shut you out completely and refuse all help. You cannot help people who won't accept it, and you cannot light yourself on fire to warm someone forever. Eventually the fire burns out, and that burnout will affect you for a long time. I was asking this 6 months ago and I've only just left the guy. If you're considering it, it's probably time to give up. You cannot help someone that won't help themselves. When it's one-sided effort, then it's time to go, man. Even when they choose to be back, just let it go, because all it's doing is repeating a cycle. The sad part was you kept thinking that they would change, but in the end it was your wishful thinking all along. Give up when you've given them too many chances to prove themselves and they've come up short every time. It isn't just a bad luck streak after a certain point. Give up when you start to notice the signs that they're lying no matter what the reason. When you see through their bulls every time they open their mouth. At that point you're hurting no one but yourself. In my experience, when you no longer respect them, if you didn't in the first place, maybe change your idea of what a relationship is. I didn't really respect my ex, and that's part of what killed things. When I catch myself thinking similarly disrespectful thoughts about my partner, I stop and remind myself that respect is part of love, and reframe my thoughts. It makes such a difference. When they flat out refuse to seek help for their depression and instead self-medicate with alcohol, then make you sick with worry that they're gonna die of alcohol poisoning on a weekly basis, thus triggering your own downward spiral and so on and so forth. It was a good relationship for the first 3 years. I don't know how I stuck around for the last 4. When they give up on themselves, I'd always end up broken down on the highway. When I stood there trying to flag someone down, nobody stopped. But when I pushed my own car, other drivers would get out and push with me. If you want help, help yourself. People like to see that. Chris Rock. The big issue with that is stuff like depression. It's hard to develop and help yourself after a failure, especially something big. I've been out like that for a year before now, and I've just had another string of failure. I've really just lost hope on anything getting better. When they ask you for money so they can have lunch with their ex. There are many factors. If you start to think about it, I'd say it is a warning sign, because if you're content with your partner and the relationship, you wouldn't ask. However, the other factor would be if you guys are distant physically, mentally and emotionally. Sometimes it's just not meant to be. A deal breaker could be when the other person is not willing to put in the amount of effort and time into you and or the relationship. I mean, let's be real. If they are not up for it, what's the point, right? Though, this depends on the people involved and their views on relationships. Also, their values, attitudes and beliefs. If it doesn't match with yours, or if you guys are not willing to work with it, then it's not going to end well for the both of you. If the relationship is toxic, you should break it off. These are just a few reasons for many others. Hope it helps. Good luck. When you're the only one really trying, I learned the hard way that I can love someone with all I've got, but if they don't want to try, I can't force them to. I've been single a month now. It truly does get better even if your ex was your whole entire life. Going through this right now with my wife, separated for almost 2 weeks. It feels like I'm the only one trying to put us back together, and her puzzle piece isn't fitting like it used to. When they unfairly judge you instead of discussing things with you. When they won't apologize or won't offer basic respect. When they put zero effort into communicating or resolving differences. When they won't meet you halfway. When the affection is gone. After my granddad died, he left everything to my dad, which didn't go down well with my aunt and uncle. You might think it's understandable, but they both have a history of being generally crappy people despite my granddad's best efforts, so it wasn't that surprising. My aunt spun my dad this tale of getting a divorce and heavily hinting that she needed a place to stay. My dad said that she can rent my grandparents' old place from him until she can get the money together for a mortgage and buy it outright. We never heard from her again after that. Fast forward 7 years to last September, and I get a phone call from my dad telling me that my cousin, this aunt's son, had died. He'd been going through some old newspapers and found his obituary in a local newspaper from May. They hadn't even bothered to contact us about it. I had only ever met the guy 3 times at most, but I had thought that we could have at least put hostilities aside for a death in the family. As far as I'm concerned, that whole side of my family can rot. That's pretty crappy. My family has some jerks, but that is next level right there. You can walk away from someone without giving up on them. It's important to recognize that your own well-being is invaluable, and if you're in a situation that calls for you to sincerely and willfully put that on the line, you have a right and obligation to walk away. You aren't doing anyone any favors by subjecting yourself to harm. If anything, it's just a good way to stroke your own ego. After being around them, you feel exhausted. When you know in advance you're going to feel exhausted, you always feel confused and foggy. You wonder what just happened. You walk away thinking, why do I bother? These are just for after being around them, mind you. My mom told me, look at what you're putting into the relationship. Friends, SOS, family, anybody. Now look at what they are putting in. Does it seem fair or equal? Good. If it doesn't, you don't need them. This advice has led to me cutting many toxic or unneeded ties. When being with them hurts more than being alone. When you are the one making all the efforts to keep the relationship alive and there is nothing from the other side. When they have time for everyone except you. When you are more in love with their old self than the one they are now. When their actions or views make you start to compromise your core morals and happiness. You have to cut them loose. If you don't, you will not only grow to hate them, you will also hate yourself for allowing it. My sister is a drug addict who only calls me if she needs something, and had never been there for me growing up. I barely know her. My family doesn't get why I cut her off. Sisters don't do the things she's done. When they start to harm your well-being is time. The moment you realize that they are their own person with their own mind, and sometimes you can say all the right things but they'll still do the wrong things anyway. So you just let go and let them mess up and fix it themselves. Codependency is hard. 1. When they're a narcissist. Narcissists never change. They never view themselves as the problem. So if you know someone whose NPD is affecting your life, then you need to decide whether it's worth it to keep them as a part of it. 2. When it becomes apparent, after years of trying, that a person will never change their situation. They'll just complain about it. My oldest brother and his toxic marriage is a perfect example. Wasted 10 years of our lives trying to get through to him. I had to go very limited contact with him from now on. 3. Fool me once. Shame on you. Fool me twice. How many chances will you give someone to screw you over? Loved one or not, they don't need 5-10 chances to frick up. Baseball rule. 3 strikes and you're out. First strike, meh, it happens. Second strike, point it out, clear the air, demand that it won't happen again. Third strike, time to move on. No fuzz, no drama. If you continue to hang out with this person, well, you know what to expect in the future, so just don't. Note, some offenses are worth 2 strikes. I have to disagree. I think it depends. If it's something there, like treating the other like garbage, dude, 2 strikes. Morib 3. But when is something that is part of how they are used to behave and you point it out, if they accept to change it, they are bound to slip here and there. My point, carefully with this rule, it doesn't apply to every situation. I've told this to so many people about relationships, romantic or otherwise. They are always a two-way street. If one party isn't going to put forth the effort to make the relationship work, then it never will. When they crap on a chair in your house after you treat them to an expensive dinner and they try to blame it on your pets, followed by blaming their girlfriend, there's more to the story, but that's enough for me. Some people are just going through a bad time or rough patch, but when you realize it's not a rough patch, it's just them, bail the frick out of there. They're not going to change. Know this, you can't control or fix other people. All you can do is control how you react to them. If you don't like your reactions or if you don't feel like yourself when you react, it's time to give up and move on. You are an adult. You and only you are responsible for your happiness. Yoso is an adult. He is solely responsible for his/her own happiness. If you're not happy when you're alone and single, then you need to address that. Same goes for Yoso. Only then can you both be happy together. Because when you're happy and independent, then you can be with someone because you want to, not because you need to. If you or Yoso grew up in an environment where there was abuse, physical, sexual, verbal, emotional, or one or more parent abused alcohol or drugs, and you haven't worked with a therapist, then you're probably in a dysfunctional relationship. I know there are many of you out there right now reading this and thinking, but I'm fine, that's denial. You're not fine. See a therapist. If this applies to you, then you have no business being in a relationship and you should consider leaving and working on yourself. If this applies to Yoso, then he should consider leaving and working on herself. If Yoso is the one saying I'm fine, then you should consider leaving. If you feel that you have to walk on eggshells around Yoso for any reason, then it's time to move on. If this applies to you, then you have no business being in a relationship and you should consider leaving and working on yourself. Talk to an actual therapist about this decision before doing it. Don't leave your freaking partner because some rondo on the internet said to. I have a 21-year-old living in my basement suite. He is a good guy but suffers from a few different mental illnesses. Since he was my only renter for quite a while, a nice kid, and I felt bad for his living arrangements, was not allowed to move in with his parents. I charge only $400 a month, everything included. He lived off social assistance and would have months he could only pay partial rent. I told him it was fine. He could pay me back in time. I tried not to enable him but cut him some slack. I offered to help him get his license, make a resume, drop off resumes. I was able to get him a job making $100K a year if he stopped smoking dope for a month to pass a pre-employment test. No luck. Last week my upstairs tenants complained about the drug use and unexpected visitors arriving at night and causing a scene. So we had to serve an eviction notice. I felt horrible for him, but then his mom messaged me with a very passive-aggressive text about how I am really classy for evicting her son. I did not respond and blocked her number. I wasn't even the one who evicted him. Property management did because they had a financial obligation for themselves. Point being, I don't mind putting in an effort to help, but frick putting in this much effort. When that someone does not value you, when that someone does not care if you are happy or sad, when that someone is so much involved in his/her own life that they don't have time to talk to you, when you are no longer their priority, when they can spend days without talking to you, when their words does not support their action, when they try to control your life. If you love something, set it free. If it comes back, it's yours. If it does not come back, it was never meant to be. Unknown. There's been some studies about this, and if remember correctly, a good relationship has 9 positive interactions to every single negative interaction. Of course, in reality, you're not keeping count. So it's better to think about it this way. You can have great long-lasting relationships without passion. People do that all the time. You can't have that if you don't actually like the person. You can't have it if, even though you like the person, you have no sense of commitment to them. Evaluate where you stand with those things, because so many people give up on great things when the passion runs out. Only stop CPR when you cannot physically continue. Are instructed by a medical professional paramedic to stop if there is a clear sign of death, decapitation, etc. Otherwise, you don't give up on them. Keep pumping. When she told me to leave because she was just going to hurt me, I will not chase anyone, and if they want to walk out of my life, they had no business being there in the first place. Also, that girl had more issues than Spider-Man. You can only try to help someone as they are trying to help themselves. If you're trying to help someone and they're still not trying to help themselves, you just might have to give up. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved, or they'll drag you down with them. Sometimes, it's no one's fault. Some people are not compatible, and while some things about them may be great, it will never work out in the end. There are, roughly, 5 billion people on the earth, so just as they say there's someone for everyone, there are just as likely, even more so really, a lot of people who are fundamentally not right for everyone. I recommend sleeping on it, but don't sleep on it forever. If you feel you're not happy, in the long run, You will be happier if you don't stay in that situation. TLDR. Never settle. You're worth more than that, but really think about it first. Relationships are a series of mutual compromises, but everyone has their line in the sand on various issues: hygiene, sex, attention, finances, etc. Once the line is crossed, you no longer want them to go back. I'd guess that as you're already asking, you're teetering on the edge. It isn't crossed yet, but it's very close. So if you really want that person in your life, better have it out in a serious discussion very soon. Good luck. When you look into their eyes and see a shell of the person they once were, it weighs heavy and there is no easy path to do it, but you will make it, and you will carry on. We all do. When you can't find happiness with someone, they stress you out too much, give you a lot of anxiety, you are afraid to even confront or talk to them about anything you are worried or bothered about, are willful. When a person breaks a trust pact, can be secrets, confidence, sex, and you forgive them and they do it again, then it's over. Get out and be the classy one in the room. When they consistently mock you and blatantly ignore your anxiety even though they are your cousin and best friend since you were kids. Just because someone stumbles, loses their way doesn't mean they're lost forever. Reconcile. Always forward. Forward always. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.